In this Sunday's readings, we hear the story of the temptation of Jesus in the desert. Jesus was in the desert for 40 days, and on a number of occasions he was tempted by the devil. It's a really interesting piece of scripture. It's one that I've heard before, but I don't know if I've ever really studied properly. The line that stood out for me is where it says that he, Jesus, was hungry. To be honest, I've never really thought of Jesus being hungry before. I guess I knew that he must have been. We hear stories of him eating and lots of stories of him at parties in the scriptures, but I've never really thought of him as being hungry. And in the story I realise that the hunger of Jesus is obviously a physical one, but actually in the text there we hear that it was also an emotional and a spiritual thing. Jesus said, "Man does not live by bread alone." There are constant choices in front of me every day in the normal everyday decisions I have to make. Are there in my tiredness, in my frustrations, and sometimes when I'm hungry. But also when I'm contented, when I'm satisfied, when I'm pleased with myself. More often than not, for me, the real temptations are self-indulgence, self-satisfaction, self-contentedness. So the challenge for me in this week's Gospel is to recognise that there's no moment in my life when there isn't a moment of temptation, a moment to only think about myself, or a temptation to only think about myself. In this city, in every city, there are people that are truly hungry as Jesus was after 40 days in the desert with no food. The real temptation for me is to forget about others and to only focus on myself. The Lenten sacrifices that I might make don't necessarily need to be gloomy, self-indulgent, ashes and sackcloth kind of things, or even the simple giving up chocolate. The challenge for me this Lent is to become more like Jesus, saying no to myself, yes to others, and yes to God more and more each day.